And I hated flipping homes with a passion. Not when I started, but by the end, I flipped hundreds of homes and they're awesome. I would not change the journey for anything, but it's a lot of work and I'm getting old. I always lost the most money when I tried to expand outside my area to get more opportunity. I didn't know the market. I didn't have the contractors. I learned through losses in the first part of my career that expanding beyond your geographic region is tough. And so it was a huge lesson to me in life of stay on target. Like if you find something that works that makes money, don't go do something else. Like just stay in that thing, be an expert in it. I made a lifestyle choice to exit flipping and doing rentals. And ironically, as I exited that market, as we all know, that next 4 years in COVID was an absolute boom for real estate investors and the prices are going up crazy.
Rich Lennon joins me, and you can learn what he is up to. Head over to richlennon.com. I'm going to have that as a clickable link in the show notes, but really appreciate your time here, Rich.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to chat today.
We're not going to spend a ton of time on it, but everybody likes to hear origin stories. So, what's yours? How did you find your way into real estate?
My wife told me I had to move to Richmond, Virginia. So she totally bribed me. I was starting to buy real estate a little bit in Northern Virginia, and it doesn't really cash flow at all. My wife came to me. I've known her since high school, and she came to me one time. She said, "Oh, remember all those stupid things you did in life? Well, I want you to move to Richmond with me." So she used getting into real estate to bribe me that way. And I came down to Richmond in like 2011. Good time to buy houses, by the way. And I proceeded to buy as many as I could. I bought 3, 4, 5 a month for about a decade. And in 2020, when COVID came around, I had about 14 full-time employees. And I'm like, I kind of hit my imaginary number a while ago. And I was like, I'm bouncing. And yeah, kind of shut it down. I kind of started lending. And I don't know, I've just been on that real estate investor path and been here for a while.
It's interesting you got out of it. Like, what was the that just
Lifestyle
kind of
choice.
like that was enough?
It's like one thing I've learned is that people who kind of make their own money in life, they could have always stopped along the way. And so I don't really think of it as stopping, although at the time I did kind of think of it as stopping. Like a lot of times in my life, I just draw imaginary lines and say, like, oh, I'm successful if this happens. And then you get there and you're like, okay, well, my life's still complicated. And I hated flipping homes with a passion. Not when I started, but by the end, I flipped hundreds of homes and they're awesome. I would not change the journey for anything, but it's a lot of work and I'm getting old. I got a lot of gray hairs on me now. And I just wanted to discover what the next thing. And then, COVID came along and the world changed and I pivoted with it.
So, based on some of the stuff that I've seen regarding you, you've even mentioned that rentals is a good wealth builder, but there's a limit to the wealth you can build.
Yeah.
Could you
Well,
talk a little bit about that?
yeah. So, everybody talks about rentals being an infinite return. And that's not, it's only accurate for one moment in time. When you refi and then you have the equity, get your money back. Okay. That's the wealth. But every day past that, the return on that wealth shrinks because the equity increases and the rent increases a little bit, but it doesn't really keep up. You look at your wealth and you're like, wow, I'm only getting like a 4 or 5% return on my wealth because all my wealth is sitting in equity. Rentals play a huge part in the wealth discussion and how to get there and how to grow into there. They're great at creating wealth, but you need to earn it at a higher rate if you want to keep going up that food chain, for lack of a better word.
Okay. So you focus primarily then on private money lending?
I do. I mean, I still hold a portfolio, and my general rule is like, buy one, keep one. So I ended up with a lot of rentals. So I'm still a landlord. But I did in 2020, I started to really lend out my money. And then I got real serious about lending out my money. And yeah, I would say my primary job in today's real estate market is I'm a private money lender.
Okay. So what type of things do you lend on?
It varies a little bit, but I would say 95% of that portfolio is single family rentals, where I'm renting to either someone who's flipping a home or I'm lending to someone who's doing the BRRRR. And so I'm lending to the exact same business model for which I grew up in and certainly comfortable in the space. But I lend non-owner occupied short-term commercial loans.
Okay. And how do you vet those out? Like, what's the process?
Well, I'm strictly a real estate underwriting process, but I've done a lot of loans at this point. I can't tell you that the people that have a lot of experience are any more successful than the people who have very little experience. Oftentimes, the inexperienced person wakes up at 6 o'clock in the morning and is on the job site ready to go because it's like their whole life. And then the experienced person who's buying five a month, they're like, oh, it sits there for 3 months because they're so busy doing other things. And so you always just underwrite the real estate. Classic 70% minus repairs needs to be what the deal is underwritten at. And then they got to put 10% down.
So there must have been a point, like you mentioned, you still have a portfolio of rental properties. Based on what you've just said there, are you liquidating those?
And so when you're flipping a bunch of homes, you have a whole bunch of money on the street that you're not aware of. And then if you stop doing that, that money eventually comes back to you. And so I started to lend that out, but I quickly ran out of money. And so I looked at where my wealth was, and it was in equity. And so I began to liquidate the equity as a smart of a tax strategy as I could get. But I also didn't like 1031 things or go into opportunity zones because I wanted the freedom of the capital. And that's because when I lend, I can typically lend at a return rate of about 30%.
You can lend at a 30% rate?
Yeah. So I lend to the borrower at 20%. That's what I used to borrow at, by the way. So 20%, you can call it 13% and 3 points, or you can call it 2 points a month or like whatever. But most of the market lends at about 20%. And so as I started to run out of money, because I was flipping a lot of homes, I had a lot of access to private capital. And so that private capital was actually upset with me when I stopped moving their money. Like, you ever move someone else's money for a while, they get used to that and they want you to keep doing it. So now my lending model is I lend,
Mhm.
so my average loan is like 200,000. And so I lend at 20%, but I only put in 50% of the money. And so I give my private capital, I call it lazy money, I give them 10%. And so the way the numbers look is, so my average loan is 200,000 and I put 100,000 of mine in plus 100,000 of lazy money in. So if someone borrows $200,000 from me at 20% for a year, that's $40,000 of interest payments. Now I have to give my lazy money, I have to give them back 10%. And so they put 100,000 into the deal. And so they get 10% of that 100,000. So they get 10,000 of that interest. So there's $30,000 of interest left over. And my investment was $100,000. So I get about 30% return.
It sounds like you got quite the deal going on there.
I love
That,
notes and money. Yeah. The,
right?
the lending part of it, the debt part of it.
So is that typically the duration is usually a year's time?
8.5 months. So the note is either written for 6 months or a year, but after doing a whole bunch of them, the number ends up being around 8.5 months. Everybody says it's 6 months. I'll get you the money back in 6 months. Well, you got to pull the permits and you got to do a whole bunch of stuff. And houses are staying on the market longer.
Right. So is this something you do nationwide, or are you focused on particular areas?
No, I just do my local city, which is Richmond. And I really encourage people not to do nationwide. I don't think there's a huge need for it. I don't know how much money you need in your life, but I always lost the most money when I tried to expand outside my area to get more opportunity. I didn't know the market. I didn't have the contractors. I learned through losses in the first part of my career that expanding beyond your geographic region is tough. There's plenty of opportunity in my local market where I can see it and touch it and feel it. I'm much more acquainted with the value.
Sure. What has been your biggest, let's say, the most expensive lesson you've learned so far?
Like in all of real estate investing?
Well, let's start with the rentals or the BRRRRs or what have you, and then we'll go into the money lending.
Okay, so and maybe it doesn't have to do with the BRRRRs, but my biggest mistake was I tried to become a software engineer, right? In the middle of being a real estate investor. I was doing great as a real estate investor, but I was automating things a little bit earlier than most people in their businesses. And so many of my friends came to me and said, you should go make money doing that. And so I stopped doing what was making me money to go do something that was going to lose me money. And not only did I lose money, but I lost the opportunity in the business for the year and a half, which I was distracted doing something else. And so it was a huge lesson to me in life of stay on target. Like if you find something that works, that makes money, don't go do something else. Like just to stay in that thing, be an expert in it. But that was my biggest lesson, was actually trying to do something else.
Hmm. So how about in your lending? Like, what's been the biggest lesson there?
I think the biggest lesson has been expectations of my lazy money partners. And so that's the partner in the deal. And sometimes, particularly early on, I thought I could see the playing field. I understood the game, but sometimes my partners didn't. And that caused anxiety with the partners. I should have done a better job of explaining things and like, hey, I'm going to write this out and you're going to sign this little thing here. Not because anything ever got legal or that, but these were people who knew, like, and trusted me. And then all of a sudden you're kind of in a disagreement about something. And I think being reflective of that and saying like, okay, like you have to, not everybody can see it the way you see it. You need to communicate better.
So going back to that first lesson, you said stay focused and stick to the something that was making you money. The BRRRRs and the rental properties were something that sounds like it was working okay, but what made you decide that the private money lending would be a better choice?
I didn't make that conscious decision. So I made a lifestyle choice to exit flipping and doing rentals. And ironically, as I exited that market, as we all know, that next 4 years in COVID was an absolute boom for real estate investors and the prices are going up crazy. And I would have made a lot of money by staying in, but certainly didn't know that at the time, but it still would have made the same decision. It was lifestyle of like, I've accomplished what I wanted to accomplish. And then investing just kind of came for a need of, now that I have time, I begin to analyze things like, hey, what's my goals with the next step and what's the most efficient way to get there. And I ended up in lending.
So when somebody comes to you and wants your help regarding this, what do they have to have lined up and ready for you for proper review?
So let me make sure I understand it completely. If someone wanted to learn what I was doing, what would they really have to realistically be successful doing it? Is that the question?
Well, I think we're going to get to that later.
Okay.
Like, what ducks do they have to have in a row in order
That's a
for
great
you
question.
to lend money to them?
They have to have something under contract. I don't like to go underwrite other people's deals if it's not under contract. I want what they think the property value is going to be. I want what they think the repairs are going to be necessary on the property. I want to see the contract that they have so I know that the price that they're paying. And I want pictures of the property so that I can compare it to what they think it's going to cost so that I know if they're a reasonably competent a business person. So that I'm not looking at a project that's $100,000 and they're saying, well, it's a $50,000 project. And so I'm probably just judging them on some basic pieces of information there because all the underwriting we do ourselves. And it's pretty easy to do underwriting nowadays. Data on these things is, you really can do remotely a reasonable job of figuring out that the repair value of something. Other than that, we just do our own underwriting and then we have a conversation.
Do you send boots on the ground to validate a few things or just
Normally,
every-
yeah, normally. And those boots are often me. So I'll go out there and I'll take a look at it. If you've never done this before, you should absolutely have a professional. There's a lot in the market that you can pay $150 to do an inspection on a house and they'll come back and tell you what it is. And you can either make the borrower pay for that or you can pay for that, whatever your business model is. Certainly an important part of that equation. Shouldn't be willy-nilly about slinging around a couple $100,000.
So just to remind everybody, head over to richlennon.com to learn more information there. If you found some value in what we're talking about, this show only grows if you share this with one of your investor friends. So please do that. And if you're watching us on YouTube, give us a like and subscribe. So Rich, we had to clarify my past initial question there, but going to what you thought I was asking, let's say somebody is looking to start lending their capital, doing something similar to what you are. What type of things should they prepare for?
I think they have to be financially in a spot to do it. And with anything, of course, there's risk. I think if you underwrite it correctly, the number one factor to whether or not you'll get your money back is how much skin in the game does the borrower have, and are they invested in the success? I just want to make sure I said that before we went too long. But to me, when I lend, you have to protect. It comes down to this: you have to protect that lazy money person. You have to protect your partner in a way that most people aren't willing to protect them, in my opinion, sometimes. And so, like for example, do we do a first loss position? Not everybody has to do that, but we do it. So it's $100,000 lost to me before my lazy money partner loses a nickel. You have to have enough of a buffer to where you can secure that lazy money. $5,000 is not enough on a $200,000 loan. You could lose $5,000 in a heartbeat. And so I really encourage people that if they're going to do it in a model like this, they have to have in the minimum of 25% in the deal, preferably 50%. Why should someone else give you money if you won't put up your own money in the deal? And be willing to take a loss because you're going to run point. So what you have to prepare yourself for is you have to have the finances to be able to do that. So you have to build that original nest egg. You can't necessarily go out and I'm going to lend a whole lot of money if you don't have some ability to participate.
I would imagine you do get some individuals who want you to see the equity that they have in the property that they have under contract.
They do, and I'll never accept it. And that doesn't mean that someone else won't accept that, because I certainly know lenders who will accept that. It just comes down to individual business choice. And for me, I can just say, like, I want that person to put a significant amount of money in, and that is my buffer. And they could do nefarious things that I need protection from. They could just run into life things where they get in a car accident. And so that money has to be there. For me, it's no exceptions, even with friends and even with people I've done business with a long time.
Can you talk a little bit about the security that adds to the deal? Not only financially, but it's almost like getting coaching. It's like when you invest in something like that, the little skin in the game actually goes a long way in
Yeah.
making sure they stick with it.
But it's their money. They're out there at 6 a.m. in the morning. They are on it, because they understand that, because we do something called reverse draws as well. So let's say that my average loan is 200,000. So they got to come to the deal with 20,000 just to get in the door. And then on the draws, they do the work, and then you give them the money. You never give them the money up front. And so now they've $20,000 in, and they've done $15,000 of work. Now they're in for $35,000 to finish the project. The project will get done, even if it runs into complications.
Mhm.
And you got to stay on that side of it. It's when it flips, when you're chasing the money. Like if you release all the draw money at the beginning, now you're chasing. And in those scenarios, you will have a significant amount of defaults.
So I read somewhere that you have a thing regarding IRAs, whether it's self-directed, but one of the things that stood out to me was you believe you should get 100% returns every year on your IRA until it reaches 100,000. Can you explain that?
Yeah, I suspect most of your audience members can think of a real estate transaction that can make them $50,000. It's probably a flip. And so the last one's the hard one, going from 50 to 100, because you're going to have to do some type of transaction in there. It has to be an investment. You have to follow the rules. But anything that you can do in real estate, you can likely do it in your self-directed IRA. And we've all been around transactions where you put $6,000 in, like making $6,000 in a real estate transaction is fairly easy. And so now you went from 6, you went to 12. So now you got to go 12 to 25. So you're gonna make 13,000. Well, making 13,000 is pretty easy in a real estate business. And then up the chain, the next one is 26, and then the next one is to 50. And so you can flip a home, for example, in a self-directed IRA. Are there rules? Yes. Do you have to follow them? Yes. Do you have to understand them? Yes. Do you have to educate yourself? Yes. But it's also tax-free money. And so there is a barrier there, and that's a barrier of education. But there is almost nothing that you can do with an LLC that you cannot do with an IRA. They are both just contracts. They're entities. And they just have separate rules.
Talking about rules, is there rules that people need to be aware of, like SEC or anything regarding the lending that you're doing?
Yeah, you need to make sure that you're SEC compliant within your state. Absolutely. And so that matters on things like usury. And so I say pretty casually, okay, I lend money at 20%, but I lend money in Virginia, right? And then I follow all the rules, which is like, I cannot lend to an owner occupied. You get in all kinds of trouble with Dodd-Frank rules. And you are making a commercial loan as a private money lender to an entity. And each state is different. In some states, I wouldn't even recommend you try to do it. Particularly California and New York are very difficult on this subject. Texas too, a little bit. So yes, you have to know your individual SEC rules to do it. You need to understand what's usury, and you need to understand who you are allowed to lend money to. That said, I think the private money lending industry is pretty big in every state. Be
Yeah,
compliant. Talk to an attorney. For the love of God, don't listen to Rich Lennon and say, I'm going to go do this. Make sure that you get you get good legal advice.
Every time it seems like it happens almost on a regular basis. California and New York, they sure get hit hard. I don't even know how development even happens in those states.
I don't. I'm with you on this. And we keep saying it's only a matter of time, but feel like I've been saying that for, 20 years. Well, which I guess is a small amount of time, but yeah, I don't either. So yes, but to your point, make sure you follow the rules.
I wanted to kind of take a turn on things here just a little bit before we start closing out the show and going into the rapid fire. It looks like you have some opinions about what we're teaching kids when it comes to money.
Yes.
Could you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I mean, the United States government, it does a very poor job of preparing its population to understand money at even a basic fundamental level. And I didn't even begin to think about it until I was like 35 years old, and I think about it all the time. It was lost and wasted. And so we early on, because I had no education growing up on it. So we have the Lennon Bank. And so we have a very complicated taxing system with our kids. And it all started because we got tired of making them sandwiches to go to school. And you can wrap wealth in like life as well. And it's a pretty good lesson. Well, my wife didn't want to make the sandwiches for the kids with three of them to go to school every day. She's getting tired of it. She's like, "Hey, Daddy, it's your turn." And so I didn't want to make them very long either. And so, but the kids always wanted to buy. So what we did was we said, okay, we're going to pay you an allowance of $20 a month. But now they get $20 a week. First thing we do is we tax them. We're like, here's 20, and then they have to give us 10. And so the 10 goes into a savings account that is their savings and they can't touch it. Now they can do whatever they want with the other 10, right? They can do whatever they want. And school lunches cost exactly $2. And mommy and daddy are not making lunch anymore. So if you want that $2, you have to do those chores, but you're going to decide, are you going to either spend the time and do the work and make your own lunch? If you do, you get $10 and you buy anything in the world you want with it. And we won't say a word. We won't judge you. You earned it. You get it. And so we just kind of started with that. We called that the Lennon Bank. And now the kids, like, they'll contribute money to a loan and they'll watch it grow without earning any money themselves. And, they're just like teenagers and preteens, but like we go to Disney World and those kids don't ask us to buy stuff. They're not like, I want that thing, or can we go? They don't do it because they're spending their own money and they're earning at an early age. It's got to work for it. So we're pretty passionate about it.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that because we have more debt per capita on credit cards than we ever have seen in our lifetime. And I think you've hit the nail on the head. A lot of people, young adults especially, it's like it's just fictitious money. It's like it's not real or something to them.
Yeah, they don't get it at all. But at an early age, they understood if they wanted to buy Pokemon cards, they had to make lunches till they could afford to buy the Pokemon cards. And it has been fun watching that evolve over the last 8 or 10 years.
At a
My kids are
certain
probably
point,
going to get therapy.
well, I would imagine they start to question whether the Pokemon cards are worth it.
That's exactly what they do. My son, who earned his own money, was convinced that he could go to the store and buy these baseball cards, send them off, and pay $10 to have them graded. It's going to come back as a 10, and he's going to get like $600. And it didn't matter what mom and dad said. So we let him go through it, and it crushed him. That was hard to watch as a parent, by the way. But man, he remembers that. And like, so he doesn't buy that stuff. Like he learned it early in life. And, it's because he earned that money, sent it off, believed what they told him was really going to happen, and that he was going to get wealthy really quick without doing a whole bunch of stuff. And he lost all of his money.
Mhm.
And I'm actually kind of sad just thinking.
You do have to learn those things. And I think a lot of people, I think it's even gotten more so. When I was a kid, I remember the late night programming. Getting into real estate was get rich quick. But with the internet and everything, we're fed these get rich quick, easy ways all the time.
Yeah, it doesn't work. It's hard work and it's grinds a lot. And I'd walk away from it. You just can't sustain everything forever. And those things are okay as well. My wife wrote a book about it, Lennon Bank. We're both passionate about it.
Well, just to remind everybody again, it's richlennon.com. Before we jump into the rapid fire and close out this episode, Rich, is there anything we should have hit on?
No, it's a great conversation. I really appreciate your questions. They were a lot of fun.
Well, if you're ready, we'll dive in and close out this episode.
Yeah, let's do it.
What lie do real estate investors often tell themselves?
how much money they're really making. They're not accounting for the taxes. Most of them can't keep good bank accounts. They don't know when they're borrowing money. They don't know whose money is theirs. They have 2 or 3 bank accounts. They look at it and say, I got a bunch of money in there. I'm being successful. They just don't know their books. And what they think they're making, they're likely not making.
I'm going to add on to that. I can't tell you how many people I've seen who do fix and flipping, and all they've done is like they don't take into account how much time they put into it.
Yes.
If you could go back in time and give your younger self a piece of advice, what would it be?
Control real estate earlier in life. And controlling real estate through whatever means. And you learn that there's a lot of means to control it. I wish I had had those 15 years back and I had understood it at 20 years old. That would be the number one thing.
Do you have a book recommendation?
Yeah. Invest in Debt by Jim Napier is an awesome book that will make you think about debt in a different way.
And then finally, what single strategy or tool have you implemented that has had the biggest time-saving impact to you or your business?
I'm a real AI guy. I do a lot with artificial intelligence, and I know that's a little bit cliche, so I'll be a little bit more specific. I really allow my AI to get to know who Rich Lennon is so that I can get another input from Rich Lennon on decisions. Artificial intelligence, you have to be on board.
Well, Rich, this was fantastic. I really appreciate your time. RichLennon.com. Learn more information there. Going to be a clickable link in the show notes, but I hope you'll consider coming back again sometime.
Yeah, Jack, I really appreciate it.